So when I agreed to do this presentation, UKNOF was getting a much smaller attendance, so I'm feeling slightly overawed this morning. I haven't been to a UKNOF for about a year, and the attendance was much smaller then. So as Keith said, I haven't been able to give this presentation due to various circumstances, so I apologise for that. So the stuff that I'm going to talk about is actually stuff we finished doing, well, over a year ago now. So, but you know, it's still hopefully that'll be interesting to some of you. So my name is Carr. I'm a systems admin at Nominet, and I'm guessing that most of you know who Nominet are and what they do. But I'll give you a quick overview because I know that obviously there's a lot of new attendees at the moment. So Nominet are the UK Registry for UK domain names. We're a non-profit organisation who makes a profit. But we have a charitable foundation attached to us, so any profits we make are either ploughed back into the business or invested for future growth, or are given to charity, and we give a large donation to the Nominet Trust once a year. Nominet are moving into new business opportunities at the moment, where most of you will know that ICANN are releasing lots of new top-level domains, lots of them going into the route at the moment. And Nominet are going to be running several of those. None of ours are actually in the route yet, but they will be later this year, hopefully. As most of you will probably know, we're also going to be accepting registrations within .uk later this year. I think it's sometime in June. And Nominet have also been selected to be one of only 4 what's called eBro providers. An eBro provider is an emergency back-end registry operator. So we're contracted by ICANN to be able to take over a failing GTLD registry within 72 hours of them failing. And part of that is actually we need to be able to serve a failing GTLD DNS zone within 4 hours of getting a phone call from ICANN. So that's quite a large undertaking for us. So Nominet have got several core customer-facing systems, most of them related to either registering domain names or enabling people to look up who owns a domain name, etc. So we've got EPP, which is an XML-based interface for people to register and change domain name information that our registrars use to connect to us directly. We've got the Automaton, which is quite old, and it's another registration-based system that's based on PGP-signed email. We've got the DAC, which is a domain availability checker, which enables people to check whether domains are available and you know, when they suspect that those domains are going to expire, they can constantly hammer the system to see if it's expired yet and then re-register it. And then most people, I think, know what WHO is and DNS are, so I don't think I'll explain them to this audience. And then we've got several web-based services that the registrars use to, well, registrars and registrants use to check the domain names and change the name servers and change the ownership on them, etc., etc. So going back 2 or 3 years, the legacy infrastructure we had was most of those services I was just talking about were all run from our own data centre within our Oxford headquarters, all running on physical kit, or 99% of it on physical kit. There was a little bit of virtualisation, which we were kind of testing the water with at the time. We had a backup disaster recovery centre within a colo in Kent. So some of you will have heard of the bunker. We didn't use that for any production services. We used it, basically we had a copy of all of our infrastructure in that data centre, so that if anything failed in Oxford, we could fail over to it. We did do failovers on several occasions to that data centre to test it, and also when Nominet moved offices about 6 or 7 years ago, they ran from that backup data centre for a few days while the office moves were going on. We have a network we had a network presence in Telehouse North with transit and peering on links and LoNAP. As I said, most of our kit was physical hardware, x86 mainly with a little bit of Spark, mainly Linux with a little bit of Solaris, and a little bit of Windows thrown in for some of the internal systems. So the business came to us. The business obviously knew that we were going to move into new markets, GTLDs, EBRO, those kind of things, and they came to us with several requirements to go forward into the future. And one of those was that they wanted to have agile, rapid deployment of new servers and services. So, for instance, if a new GTLD came online, we could deploy all the servers and back-end stuff for that new GTLD very rapidly and easily. They wanted to have dual data centers, which is what we already had, but they wanted to do a regular transition between those data centers, so be able to run from one month and one the next month, etc., etc. Not have one as a DR of the other, then both be effectively live in a pseudo-active kind of manner. They wanted us to be able to utilise the hardware we've got more effectively, and we want to use automation more, because we knew that obviously moving forwards we were going to have a lot more infrastructure to look after, but as in most businesses, getting new staff is to look after that infrastructure is always a difficult thing to do. So put more automation in place, as most bosses say, do more with less. And another thing that that management particularly wanted to do was we wanted to have a more service-orientated monitoring infrastructure in place. So we had very good monitoring at this time in the legacy infrastructure, but it was all based on polling servers for various metrics and then returning or opening a ticket or paging an engineer if a particular service on that server has died or wasn't performing correctly. But that doesn't necessarily give you a good view of a service, and the management really wanted to be able to look at a service and say, how does that failing thing affect that service as a whole? So about two to 2.5 years ago, we selected we selected two data centres at the beginning, and they were Equinix in Slough and Telecity in Powergate. Geneva came later, which I'll talk about in a little while, but initially we moved into Slough and Acton. We decided to try and enable us to utilise more of the hardware and to be more agile, to virtualise almost everything. So we've moved to a situation now where we're 99% virtualised. The only things that aren't virtualised currently are Oracle databases, because I'm sure many of you will have come across this, that they're difficult to virtualise both from a licensing and support perspective, and getting buy-in from the DBAs is also quite difficult sometimes as well. And then we've got some of our Windows domain controllers are physical as well. To support the virtualization environment, we're using HP 3-part storage arrays, one at each data center, and doing synchronous replication between the two data centers, so that the virtual machine images on the storage array are replicated. So we've always got a copy of every VM in every data center, and we can bring up any VM in each data center with no issues. We use VMware Site Recovery Manager to both recover in the situation where we needed to, if one data center was a smoking hole in the ground, we could use SRM to bring up all the VMs in the other data center, but we also use it to regularly transition our VMs from DC1 to DC2 in a controlled manner. From a monitoring perspective, we selected a tool from VMware called vCenter Operations. In its default state, vCenter Operations basically gives you lots of really good metrics and really good monitoring from your VMware virtualization environment. Really good dashboards, really good graphing, really good kind of intelligent alerting. But the key point we selected it for is it's able to easily pull metrics from lots of other monitoring sources, and then you can within vCenter Operations create application containers and pull those metrics into those application containers. So we've got a container that's EPP, and we've got lots of metrics coming into that EPP container from both our virtualization environment, both from our application monitoring solution, our network monitoring solution, all in a container, and then that enables us to to look at the health of an application rather than the health of a server. From a network perspective, which I guess a lot of people in the room are more interested in than servers, we use HP IMC. I'd be very interested if anybody else in the room is using that and if they what their experiences were, if anybody wants to talk to me during the breaks. We use Microsoft System Center Operations Manager for our very small Windows environment, and we use for ticketing and for collating alerts and paging our on-call engineers, we use a cloud-based system called ServiceNow, which I'm sure some of you will have heard of. So for configuration management, and particularly to focus on automation, Nominet have been quite a long-term user of a configuration management tool called Puppet. We've used the open source version of this for the past 6 or 7 years, and we use it in a kind of small way, kind of sampling it to see how good it was up until we did this infrastructure transformation. But we've used it wholesale and very effectively during this transformation, and so every server we've got in the environment is controlled by Puppet. They're automatically configured by Puppet, so we use a naming convention for all of our VMs, which indicates the service that VM performs, and Puppet looks up the service name, looks up its configuration based on the name of the host name, and automatically configures all the configuration. So we can build an EPP server, and it will automatically get the packages, the configuration, etc., and be up and running in 10 or 15 minutes. In the Windows environment, we use the whole System Center stack, so we also use System Center Configuration Manager. So moving back, some of you will have noticed on an earlier slide I mentioned that we had a third data center in Geneva. During the project, as many projects work this way, there was a major change during the project, and the business suddenly decided that they also wanted to have an additional major DR available. So as well as protecting against one of our UK-based data centers failing, they also wanted to protect against a major catastrophe happening to the UK. So, a large atomic bomb on southern England or something like that. They wanted to make sure that even in that kind of situation, the UK registry, even in a basic form, and DNS for the UK was still available to operate. So to that end, we built a third data center in Equinix in Geneva, and we run some of our just our core services there, so the database is there, and EPP and WHOIS and DNS and DNSSEC provisioning, and we haven't quite finished doing this yet, but one of the intention really is to have this our ability to be able to transition to this in a very simplified manner in a set of instructions that are left in a safe for whoever's left behind at this stage. So yeah, that's about it from me. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them now. If anybody wants to talk about this in any more depth, I'm always happy to speak to people in the breaks or whenever. Thank you.
Hi, Brett.
Okay, Trev.
Hi, Brett. This is John Dickinson from Siddon. With reference to your last slide, do you not think you might have bigger problems? And that was kind of a necessary thing to do, having a third data center, given the reasons you gave.
Well, I don't think I will have any problems because I'll be dead probably. Hopefully, anyway, I won't have to deal with it. Can you elaborate on what bigger problems do you mean?
Well, if the UK's been hit by a nuclear weapon, then who really cares if .uk is up?
Well, that was just an example. There may be some other catastrophe that, the large-scale power outage for over a long period. Other people in the rest of the world may still want to use websites or internet services based on UK domain names.
Yeah, okay. And I had another question that I've forgotten. So I'll let this guy talk.
Okay, Trevor.
1, 2. It's Trevor. Just out of interest, where do you get a nuclear bomb-proof safe from? And who gets to live in Geneva?
I think that won't be our responsibility. This will be us handing it over to the UK government and them deciding where they would like to save it. And if they choose to put it in a safe in London that's non-bomb-proof, then that's their...
Okay,
Neil.
Neil.
There are 4 sites publicly owned that are nuclear bomb-proof. If you want the addresses, I'll tell you later. But one of them's not my house. But the other, the real serious question: have you looked at the stuff HP have been doing on OpenStack and where they're taking their orchestration platform? Is that something? Because it's kind of the next step from what you articulated there. I just wondered if you had any views on it.
I think I haven't looked at it, and I think it. I had a meeting with HP a little while ago, and they did mention some of the OpenStack stuff they're doing. But I think that when we were originally doing this, that was, if that existed at all, it was in its infancy. We did look at some of the HP orchestration tools. I forget the HP, the HP equivalents to Puppet, but they were far too complex for what we needed, basically. And I don't know if that applies to the same to their OpenStack stuff, but generally the stuff that HP does in that area is you need a team of engineers in your organisation to run it, and we don't have that. So.
Okay, Nat.
Hi, Nat Morris. A question. Nat Morris, what connectivity do you have in place between the data centres, and do you have a stretched layer 2?
Yeah, so it's stretched layer 2 between the data centres, and it's 2 10 gig links, over diverse routes. I'm the server guy, not the network guy. Sorry, but I can find out for you if you're interested.
Any more questions?
Victor Hahn, Flex Optics. You mentioned you are synchronously replicating your VMware images between data centers. Do you also do this between the UK and Geneva? And did you notice any impact because of the latency?
So the transition to Geneva project is still ongoing, so we haven't got to that stage yet.
Are you planning to do synchronous
We will do some testing. I'm not sure what that testing is going to entail yet. I doubt it will be a full-scale failover, though.
Thanks.
Okay, Adrian.
Hi. Hello. Hello. Hello, Adrian from Andrews and Arnold. There's obviously concerns about the possibility of things like bombs and terrorists and so on, but aren't we living in an age where the bigger threat is, I hate the term, cyber terrorism, and what measures are there to protect against that?
So I didn't go into full details on all of the things we've deployed, but one of those things that we have done is there's some intrusion detection systems installed as part of this as well. I'm not the right guy to talk to about it, but they are there, and I don't know, and they're based on SourceFire, but I don't know exactly. I don't know anything about them really, to be honest with you.
Any more?
Okay, any more questions?
I've got one then, if nobody else wants to ask. I noticed quite a few names there: VMware Site Recovery Manager, SCOM, ServiceNow. You've got quite a bit of enterprise software there. But then I also noticed open source things like Puppet, but actually it's not Puppet, it's Puppet Enterprise. So you seem to have quite a bit of enterprise software, and then you've got this stuff you've written yourself, like the automaton. How do you find the two of these things coexisting? Why is there such a move to enterprise software? Why do you have so much of it?
So one of the, obviously, when I talked about the requirements that came from the business, I didn't talk about all of them. And one of those was that we have a fully supported enterprise level stack of stuff to run this on, and to move, not necessarily move away from open source completely, because we're still running things like Red Hat Linux, which is open source based, but we're moving. The requirement was to have everything supported by somebody, basically. And
that somebody couldn't be you?
I think it depends on, I think, no, basically, not for everything anyway. Not for everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brett.